Jai Hind everyone, my name is Aman Gupta. I am working here as an assistant professor in MC department in Ajay Kumar Garg Engineering College. So today we are going to study privacy and security in online social media whose subject code is KCA 031. So these are the topics which we cover today. That is how to avoid social media phishing attacks. As we know that when we working on social media, there are multiple types of attacks that we are facing, and one of them is phishing attack. So we discuss in detail how to avoid these type of phishing attacks, and there are many other types of activities that are attacks that bother on when we working on social media. So these other type of fraudulent entities we also studied in these slides. Next is controlled information sharing. When we are working on online social media, then it is very important that the information that means personal information about ourselves, our family, our personal details. So it is very important that we should know that what information we have to share on social media platforms. So control information sharing. Next is access control models, and then relationship based access control, privacy settings in commercial online social networks, and identity management, that is digital identity. So let's start with how to avoid social media phishing attacks. So as we know, when we are working on different type of social media, we use different type of social media account, that is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So we used these type of accounts for our official needs, for our entertainment, and many more things. For our online business, we use multiple type of social media accounts. So it is very necessary to keep in mind that when we use these type of social media accounts, then there are multiple type of hackers, and the person who want to gain our information, who want to steal our information, are available in on these platforms, also readily available. So first of all, we have to never accept friend request from people we don't know. So it is very important thing that we should know that whose person request we have to accept, or which person request we have to deny. So it is very necessary to accept the request of the persons we know personally. Second is, don't use the same password and username for all your accounts. Suppose we have an account on Facebook and we have an account on Instagram, then it is very important that the password we use for these accounts should be different. Even better is to update your details every few months, and it is very important that we change our passwords on our social media accounts constantly, rapidly, every 15 days, few months, quarterly. So it is very important to change our password. And if you suspect a website or an email, always check the URL or email address for any telltale phishing signs such as typo squatting or unprofessional email addresses. So it is also very important that when we use a website, we check the website URL very prominently. Suppose we have a trusted website, amazon.com, HTTPS. Now maybe a fraud website, AKGEC.com, and this website looks similarly like amazon.com. So it is a very much frequently used website, amazon.com, and anybody can get fraud on this website, amazon.com. So it is very important that when we use any type of website, please check the URL or email address of the website very prominently. If someone is asking for money, make sure to confirm their identity offline via phone call. So when suppose your some friend have in need of some money and he called you through your social media account and through some chat application and said that I am in a need of some money, I am in a hospital and something else, he can fraud with you. And if he said he asked some money from you, then it is very important then you, if you have his number, you called him offline and then uh, make sure that he is in a need of money. So don't take quizzes asking for personal information. There are many type of quizzes available on social media, so it is also very important to not enter your all personal details on these type of quizzes. Don't click on any suspicious links. We have multiple messages on our phone, like you get prize money, lottery, etc. So never click on that type of links. Educate customers and employees on the communication channels you use for different purposes. Educate customers and employees on the communication channels for different purposes. Detect fake profiles and counterfeit goods using automated software. When when you are in some business, then it is very important that you can detect fake profiles by some automated software. You can invest money in buying such type of softwares. Do not insert an unknown USB or other device on your computer. Never insert an USB which you don't know the source of the USB. So the virus or anything else, malware cannot enter in your system. Invest in cybersecurity software. Always think about it and invest your money in purchasing some cybersecurity softwares like antivirus, and do not allow another user to access your personal device or accounts. Never allow other person whom you don't know to access your personal device or accounts, username, password, etc. There are many other things or entities that can fraud with yourself. You can do have fraud with yourself like Facebook quizzes, email phishing, crypto scams, executive impersonation, fake business profiles, fake job offers, urgent messages from acquaintances, fake customer support, and shorted URLs. Next is controlled information sharing. There are many access control techniques that we have used today. The success of social network paradigm and its possible use for social purposes, that is independently of the reason for using online social networks, information dissemination is involved. The personal information that we have entered on our social media accounts is disseminated through these channels. Millions of individuals can easily share personal and confidential information with an incredible amount of other users. That is, when we entered our personal information of our family, our date of birth, city, job profile, etc. This type of information is shared over millions of people through these social media accounts. This poses several control issues over the spread of personal data in open social networks. Solution, and what is the solution of it? Solution to prevent unauthorized operation has been treated in information system via access control techniques. That we have to share our personal information, but we make sure that we use access control techniques to share our personal information. Traditionally, protecting data from unauthorized access requires addressing three main issues. There are three main issues. That is, first of all, data confidentiality. We have to maintain data confidentiality, that the information that we have shared is totally confidential. Preventing improper or unauthorized read operations on the managed data. That is, the data which is we share to our friends cannot be seen by other persons persons those who are not in our friends list. However, it is important to note that protecting privacy requires some additional countermeasures with respect to those employed and to ensure data confidentiality. Additional factors must be also taken into account, such as data retention period, user consent, or the purpose for which the data are collected. So these factors also affect the data confidentiality. Second one is data integrity. Protecting data from unauthorized or improper modifications or deletions. That is how to maintain integrity, that the message that passed from user A to user B, a message is transformed in its original form. This message is transferred as the same message that is transferred from user A. So that is called to maintain the data integrity, that the message that is passed from one user to another is transferred without modification or any type of alteration or deletion. Third one is data availability. Preventing and recovering from hardware and software errors and from malicious data denial attacks, making the data or some of their portions unavailable to authorized users. Means the data, when the data is required by some person, authorized person, then the data is ready to use, or the reports that the authorized user wants to see are readily available to the user, to the client. There may be some malicious attacks, DOS attacks, etc., in which some portion of the data have missing. So this type of constant should not be there. The data should be readily available. Now, what is access control models? Due to particular characteristics, it is important to understand that new access control and controlled information solutions are necessary with respect to what has been proposed so far in the field of database management system and operating system. So these type of access control model we have used: discretionary access control, mandatory access control, and role-based access control. First is discretionary access control. So it is a means of restricting access to objects based on the identity of objects. So it is a type of security access control that grants or restricts objects access via an access policy determined by an object's owner, group, or subjects. So this mechanism controls are defined by user identification with supplied credentials during the authentication. For example, username and passwords. DACs are discretionary because the subject owner can transfer authenticated objects or information access to other users. That means the owner determines the object access privileges, that what part of data he can see or use. Next is mandatory access control. It is a security strategy that restricts the ability individual resource owners have to grant or deny access to resource objects in a file system. The criteria are defined by the system administrator, strictly enforced by the operating system or security kernel, and are unable to be altered by the end users. MAC is used in areas that deal with sensitive data and require a high level of security, such as military, government, politics, foreign trade, healthcare, and intelligence. MAC is also used by the normal companies. Next one is role-based access control, that is usually called as RBAC. It is a mechanism that restricts system access. It involves setting permissions and privileges to enable access to authorized users. Most large organizations use role-based access control to provide their employees with varying level of access based on their roles and responsibilities. So, this type of access control have been distributed to the employees on the basis of their roles and their responsibilities. This protects sensitive data and ensures employees can only access information and perform actions that they need to their jobs. So, what authority they have given? They have given the only the authorities, and they can perform only the actions that they need to do with their jobs. So, this type of access control have been provided only role based access control, that if he is a sales manager, then he can only see the sales part of the organization. One role based access control example is a set of permissions that allow users to read, edit or delete articles in a writing application. So this is an example of role based access control. Next is relationship based access control, that is RBAC. It defines an authorization paradigm where a subject's permission to access a resource is defined by the presence of relationships between the source, subjects and resources. So it is defined through the relationship between the subjects and the resources. Authorization in RBAC, that is relationship based access control, is performed by traversing the directed graph of relationships. The nodes and edges of this graph are very similar to triples in the resource description framework, that is RDF data format. RBAC systems allow hierarchies of relationships, and some allow more complex definitions that include algebraic operators on relationships such as union, intersection and difference. There are multiple type of relationship characteristics. In order to understand how to take relationships into account in defining suitable relationship based control policies, it is necessary to analyze the characteristics that relationships have in online social networks. So there are multiple type of characteristics that we have taken into account for relationship. First is they are not always mutual. Example, the parent of relationship. Thus, rather than a simple graph, we have to consider a directed graph, where the direction of the edges denotes respectively which entity has specified the relationship and the entity for whom a relationship has been specified. So, maybe the relation from person A to person B may not be the same. Maybe person A trusts on person B 100%, but person B in reverse trust only 50%. So the relationship always not to be mutual. Relationships can be direct. Example, Bob has a direct relationship of type friend of with Alice, or indirect. Eve and Alice are not directly connected, but they are related in that Eve is a friend of Bob and Bob is a friend of Alice. So maybe relationships can be direct, maybe direct or maybe not direct. Relationships are composable. Given two relationships R1 and R2, one may compose the relation R1 and R2. Complex relationships can be composed from primitive building blocks. For example, the relationship friend of, we can derive the friend of a friend relationship by the composition of friend and friend of relationship. Another property is the contextual nature of relationships. For example, a physician who is one treating physician in one medical case may be very well be a consulting expert in a different medical case of his. Besides, relation types are often associated with different level of information disclosure. For example, people usually share more private information with close friends. They're very frank to share their personal information with the close friends than with other type of contacts. Maybe sometimes the person is not very frank to explain their feelings with their family and parents, but they get easily disclose their information, they share their personal information with the close friends. Apart from their type, relationships can be characterized by a trust level and by their depth. The length of shortest among the paths representing all possible indirect relationships of a type T between two users A and B. Next is enforcement requirements. Access control is usually enforced by a software module called a reference monitor that intercepts each access request submitted to the system, and on the basis of the specified access control policies determines whether the access can be partially or totally authorized or it must be denied. The robustness of access control relies on the trustworthiness of the entity implementing the reference monitor, which should correctly enforce all and only the specified access control policies. When designing an access control enforcement mechanism for online social networks, one has to decide where the reference monitor has to be placed. That is, which is the trusted entity of online social network architecture in charge evaluating access control policies. And the main drawback of this solution is that implementing a decentralized access control mechanism implies software and hardware resources more powerful than those typical available to online social network participants. Since access to a resource in an OSN is usually granted on the basis of the direct indirect relationships of the requester node has with other nodes in the network, answering an access request may require to verify the existence of a specific path within an OSN. Now, privacy settings in commercial online social networks. Personal networks allow users to create detailed online profiles and connect with other users, and usually emphasize privacy control over social relationships such as friendship. For example, we can see this type of relationship on the social media accounts like Facebook, Google Plus, Twitter, Instagram, and many more sites. For example, Facebook allows user to manage the privacy settings of the uploaded content. Content like photos, videos, status, links, notes, and other granularities. And what type of access control? Like only me, specific, and they can also choose friends explicitly or friends only, friends of friends, and everyone. So this type of access controls can be implemented on our content that we shared on the social media accounts. Next is identity management. Digital identity. It generally describes the management of user identities and their rights to access resources through the identity life cycle. According to the user's rights and restrictions associated with the established identities. So these systems, identity management systems, provide the different type of services and technologies. Identity management systems provide different type of services and technologies that is used for controlling user access to critical information. And among these services and technologies, the most well include services are Active Directory, identity providers, digital identities, password managers, and many more. Online image management is a set of methods for generating a distinguished web presence of a person on the internet. That present could be reflected in any kind of content that refers to the person, including news, participation in blogs and forums, personal websites, and social media presence through the pictures and videos that he or she posted on the social media accounts regularly. But online identity management also refers to the identity disclosure and identity theft, and has particularly been developed in the management of online identity in social network services. So the data, the personal information that we shared on the social media networks is very much prone to our identity disclosure and identity theft. Aspects belong to the both meanings constitute an integral part of the identity construction process on these sites. Digital identity is used to define the digital representation of the information that is known about a specific individual or the organization in a specific application domain. That is the definition of digital identity, and it includes unique descriptive data allowing a precise identification of an entity among others, as well as the generic information about the person. An entity, that is maybe a person or an organization, maybe they have multiple identities, and each identity may consist of multiple characteristics that can be unique or non-unique. An identity domain is a domain where each identity is unique. So we can categorize digital identity in like a personal identity, a shared identity, and an abstract identity. So first of all, personal identity composed of the persistent identity information, that is the name, date of birth, type of or the relationship of the person. Shared identity means the information which is susceptible to change, such as social network of user profile information, that is like the list, the items that the person frequently purchase on the shopping sites. An abstract identity consisting of derived or inferred information about the users. Now, identity management 1.0 IDM and IDM 2.0. So, IDM 1.0 is the defining characteristics of IDM 1.0 is that each IT system and application does its own identity management, usually by keeping a list of authorized username, password pairs, and checking it at login time. And IDM 2.0 defines a single standardized solution for an organization to assure access to IT systems and applications and given access only to appropriate persons. It requires a bigger, better list of persons, and it divides IDM into two parts. These two parts are, first of all, authentication of users, and then second is authorization of users. So that's all for today. Thank you so much.